Welcome to Go There on Fourth, a Christian video podcast about faith, football, and fantasy football. I am Pastor Jason Barnett, aka the Dirt Path Pastor. I'm not a football expert. I'm not even a fantasy football expert. I'm just simply sharing my game picks with you, my thoughts on fantasy football for the week, journeying with you through this fantasy football season, sharing my team struggles along the way. So this is our Tuesday edition. So that means, Tuesday edition. Wow. This is our Thursday edition. That means we are making our game picks today. And we're also setting our lineups in preparation for tonight's first matchup as well as the weekend. So I'm going to share with you who I think is going to win each game, as well as who I'm starting for my team. And also, let's jump right in. Last week I went 7-9. So I'm looking on my game pick. So I'm looking to improve my 43% accuracy rate. I guess I could have done a lot worse, but I didn't, thankfully. So starting off for our Thursday night and early Sunday games, we have our Vikings versus the Eagles. Last year, Kirk Cousins against the Eagles went 27 of 46, threw for 221 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. And I feel like the Eagles' defense is better this season. Yes, I know they kind of let Mac Jones and the Patriots back in the game. That's week 1, right? And defenses tend to get tired the longer the game goes, especially in week 1. So I'm going with the Eagles. I think the Eagles have, if Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers can figure out and beat them, I have high hope for Jalen Hurts and company. Packers versus the Falcons. I am picking the Packers. But what makes me nervous about picking the Packers in this one, though, is they did give up 4.4 yards per rush last week to the Bears. Now, some of that could be Justin Fields just taking off and scrambling, kind of shooting that average up. I didn't get to watch that whole game, though, so I didn't really... this is just from looking at the stats. And what also makes me nervous is the Falcons had 133 yards on the ground last week. So this could be a closer game than expected, but I'm still picking the Packers. I think Jordan Love is better than I expected him to be, and I'll share how much better I think he is a little bit later. Raiders versus the Bills. I see Josh Allen and crew bouncing back this week. I don't think they're going to struggle nearly as bad as they did last game against the Jets. And I don't think the Raiders have the same level of defense that the Jets do. So I'm picking the Bills in this one. Ravens versus the Bengals. Another AFC North divisional matchup here early on in the season. But, man, the Bengals struggled versus the Browns. And I do think the offense for the Bengals will be a little bit better this week. But I also think Lamar and company will be better this week, too. And I think Lamar will be Lamar this week. I could be wrong. Lamar is, didn't play very well in week 1. But I can see him bouncing back this week as well. So I'm picking the Ravens on the road at Cincinnati in this one. Seahawks versus the Lions. The Seahawks gave up 2 sacks to the Rams. And they really took a pounding in that game. And I think they're going to have their hands full with Aiden Hutchinson in this one. So I'm picking the Lions at home against the Seahawks. Chargers versus the Titans. I just think that the Chargers have too much offense, and the Titans do not have enough of it. So I am going with the Chargers this week over the Titans. Bears versus Buccaneers. I really kind of wanted to pick the Buccaneers in this one. Mayfield did play halfway decent last game. He did figure out the Vikings play call signals, at least if you believe the reports that are coming out, which that's incredible to be able to figure that out while playing in the game against that team. I don't know how he was able to do it and figure it out, but he did. But I just think the Bears won't need to figure it out. I think the Bears will beat the Buccaneers this week. And the Bears' defense will be a little bit trickier than the Vikings' defense. But really, the outcome of this game really will depend upon the Bears' offense. Will they play better than they did against the Packers last week? But it's not their longtime division foes that they've struggled against for a long time. And Jordan Love is just continuing the tradition that Aaron Rodgers started of the Packers owning the Bears. So maybe they should just change the name from Soldier Field to Lambeau South. Anyway, Chiefs versus the Jaguars. There's been a lot of talk of Trevor Lawrence possibly being an MVP candidate this week. He certainly played at times like that against the Colts last week. So I'm taking the Jaguars over the Chiefs this week. I know the Chiefs lost last week, I know it's rare for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid to lose 2 in a row. And I know Travis Kelce was out last week, but I think the Jaguars will find a way to get it done. Remember, they came up just short in the playoffs against the Chiefs last year. And they've had the whole offseason to work on it, figure it out. And they got to tune up with their offense in week 1 against the Colts. I'm anxious to see this matchup. I think this will be a fun game, but I'm picking the Jaguars at home in this one. Colts versus the Texans. And I'm picking the Colts, and that's no surprise if you go there on Fourth Podcast. I'm an Indianapolis Colts fan. I grew up south of Indianapolis. I've loved the Colts dating all the way back to 1996 is when I started watching football. So the Jim Harbaugh was the quarterback then. So I endured some rough times as a Colts fan there early on. But this week I'm not picking the Colts because I'm just picking out of my fandom. I'm picking the Colts because I actually really do like the Colts' chances this week. They're going against a rookie quarterback. They have a solid defense. The only thing we'll have to figure out is the running game. And I'll make this a statement about AR5, right? AR5 had a better first game than Peyton Manning in his rookie year. He had a better game than Andrew Luck in his rookie year. And I think we're going to see Anthony Richardson continue to improve as the season goes on. So I am picking the Colts in this one. Not just because I'm a fan, but because I think the Colts will actually win this game. All right. Like I said, this is a Christian video podcast about faith, football, and fantasy football. And for the faith side of things, I always like to share a brief devotional. And for today's devotional, I got thinking on the thought, where your eyes are fixed matters. That's important. Think about when you're driving in winter weather or slippery conditions. Those of you who live in the South that are listening or watching this, you may not have to endure this the same way those of us living in Kentucky and above are. But I'm sure there are conditions where this applies. But when we were driving in the winter weather, there are times where the roads get slick out and you kind of start to slide a little bit. And our tendency is to try and overcorrect to stop the slide. And that's when we end up having accidents or crashing into something or just spinning in circles because that's what happens. But the trick is to fix your eyes where you're going. And then just allow your body to naturally adjust. And it'll actually adjust the vehicle to go in that direction. Does this work 100% of the time? Probably not. But every time I've started to slide, and keep in mind, I've lived in Colorado, I've lived in Indiana, I lived in northwest Pennsylvania for a time. So I've done a lot of winter driving. I used to drive to pick up cars for dealerships up in Michigan and northern Ohio. So I've driven through a lot of snow, and this is the trick I learned. When you start to slide, focus forward and just gently accelerate, but allow your eyes to focus forward, and your body will automatically turn the steering wheel to adjust the car to where it needs to go to continue going in the direction that you want to go. Where your eyes fixed matter. In sports, when we're teaching kids to play the game, right, in baseball, what do we tell them? Keep your eye on the ball. Watch where the ball's going. I've been working with my son who's playing flag football this year, and he's learning to throw and catch the ball. And I keep getting on him when he goes to catch the ball because he always turns his head, right? And he drops a lot of catches because he turns it. Now he's in second grade, okay? And we're just playing for fun. I'm trying to help him. But we tell him, keep your eye on the ball. What do they tell quarterbacks as they're learning to develop, right? Anthony Richardson, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, these guys that like to run around in the backfield. Aaron Rodgers, right? Aaron Rodgers is really good at this. But what they try and teach quarterbacks is when you're scrambling around back there, don't just scramble, keep your eyes downfield, because as you're moving around in that pocket or you're trying to roll around to the outside, if your eyes are downfield, you might see one of your receivers come open, and their chance of scoring is a lot better than yours. And you can make a big play. And so keep your eyes downfield. So where you fix your eyes matters. And I think that really ties into a verse here in the book of Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, and this is what it says. It says, "Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." You see, before we come to know Jesus, we're looking for him, right? And when I say looking for him, I'm using that in the loosest sense of the term. In many ways, we don't even know we're supposed to be looking for Jesus. but we know we're looking for something that's missing in our lives. There's something wrong with us, and we need someone or something to fix us and help us to get through life. And so our eyes are scanning to and fro, looking around, trying to figure things out. We might be looking down, we might be looking up, left or right, but at some point, we see Jesus. Jesus has been there all along. Jesus has been calling us all along, but at some point, our eyes see him, and that's what happens initially. We look and we see Jesus, and that's when we get saved. But that's not the end of the moment, right? Once we get saved, that's not an invitation for us to turn our eyes away from Jesus and begin to look at other things, trusting that Jesus is going to bail us out time and again. And Jesus is always with us. Jesus is working on our behalf. Jesus is there for us, leading us, guiding us, transforming us through his grace. But the Christian life is one where we spend our lives with our eyes fixed on Jesus. Jesus is the one that is with us and going ahead of us, and he's gone ahead of us, right? He became flesh like you and I, and then he lived the life that was pleasing and acceptable to God, making him worthy to die on the cross as our once and for all sacrifice. And so Jesus blazed that trail for us. He showed us how to live for the kingdom. So if we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, Jesus will lead us closer to him, and he'll lead us to the things of the kingdom of God. He'll lead us to opportunities to share the message of the gospel with people. He'll lead us to opportunities where we can do good works and be a blessing in people's life. He'll lead us on a path, though it might be dark and dreary and full of all kinds of obstacles. Jesus will, if we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, he will lead us through that mess. And just like in the beginning when I was talking about, if you're driving on a slippery, wet road, or just like a kid that you're practicing throwing the ball with in the backyard, it doesn't matter what kind of ball it is, if you keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, that will align your ways to God's ways. And that's a fundamental key to the Christian life. Keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. And it does sound simple. And I'm making it sound really simplistic. But man, when we get into life and the storms are raging around us, when the problems stop piling up, when the money's not adding up, it becomes very difficult and challenging to focus on Jesus. And when we take our eyes off Jesus, that's when we begin to sink into despair. That's when we begin to sink underneath the waves of anxiety. That's when depression grabs us and begins to pull us down. And we even end up feeling sorry for ourselves at times. But we fix our eyes on Jesus. That doesn't make all of our problems go away. But we have that assurance that if we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, that there is hope. And that's what Jesus is leading us to. Well, if you enjoyed that devotional, I encourage you to check out my other podcast called the Dirt Path Sermon Podcast. It's my weekly sermon at the Ravenna Church of the Nazarene, where I pastor here in Ravenna, Kentucky. We actually live stream our service every Sunday, except for this last Sunday, so I guess not every Sunday. But we live stream our service every Sunday starting at 10:45 on the Ravenna Church of the Nazarene Facebook page. You can find that by visiting ravnaz.com. And this week, just kind of a preview of the sermon, I'm preaching a sermon called I'll Pray For You. And it's looking at the prophet Daniel. And Daniel's been led away into exile by King Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar is a man that he shouldn't care about. He has every right to be upset with. But when he's called upon, Daniel does something that most of us wouldn't do. So that's what I'll be sharing this week, and be sure to check it out. All right, let's continue on with our game picks and things today. Picks for us Sunday late games. 49ers versus the Rams. The 49ers, I can see the passing game struggling some for the 49ers. Aaron Donald up front. I mean, he wreaked havoc on the Seahawks last week. But in the end, I think the 49ers just have too many weapons, and they'll be able to overcome the Rams enough. And I think they'll be stout enough on their defense to slow down Matthew Stafford, maybe even cause a couple turnovers that actually turn the tide of the ballgame. So I'm picking the 49ers in this one. Giants versus the Cardinals. The Giants, I do not see the Giants getting shut out again. And it's the Cardinals. I know the Cardinals almost beat the Commanders last week, but the Giants, I think they're going to bounce back. They have a reason. They have a bad taste in their mouth from last Sunday against the Cowboys, and they're going to be ready to rinse their mouth out and get back after it. So I think they're going to come out firing on all cylinders and take out the Cowboys. The other New York team, Jets versus the Cowboys. We all saw what they did to Daniel Jones, and the Karate Kid is next. Zach Wilson. If you watch the video of Zach Wilson, every time I saw him with his bandana on, I just thought he looked like someone that belonged in the Karate Kid movie or Cobra Kai, a Netflix show. But in the end, the Cowboys. I'm picking the Cowboys in this one. Commanders versus the Broncos. I just maybe this is false hope. Maybe this is just me leaning too much into the past. I just can't see Sean Payton dropping 2 in a row to start. So I'm picking the Broncos over the Commanders. All right, let's get on to my team struggle. My team got off to an 0-1 start in my fantasy football league. I'm in a 12-team PPR league with custom scoring involving church folks and friends. Even though I'm 0-1, the season's not over. Now the downside is I'm up against the number 2 scoring person from last week. So I'm going to have to make sure I'm at my best, or I'm going to be 0-2 and potentially on my path to starting like I did last year off 1-5. But here's where I'm at. So at quarterback, I actually picked up Jordan Love. Remember earlier I was talking about how I believe in Jordan Love now after watching that first game. I picked up Jordan Love. I know he's going against the Falcons. It's not the greatest matchup on paper, but I'm optimistic. So this might be just me being wishful thinking, but I'm going with Jordan Love. I do have Brock Purdy, and initially I had Brock Purdy in the line, but the more I thought about Purdy versus the Rams, it's not as promising. I see some sacks and potentially some turnovers as a possibility in that divisional slugfest that's going to take place. So I feel like Jordan Love is a safer bet against the Falcons. My running back one, I'm sticking with Tony Pollard. Yes, he's going against the Jets. And I do think the Cowboys will not be able to pass the ball as easily as they did last week. The Jets' defense is for real. But I do think Tony Pollard will get some touches out of the backfield, and I think he'll get some carries in the game too. They'll have to lean on him a little bit. Dameon Pierce versus the Colts. I'm not crazy about this matchup. The Colts' defensive front is pretty good, but it's a rookie quarterback versus a good defense, and that's a recipe for having to run the ball. So I could see Dameon Pierce getting some carries, and if you're dealing with some injuries at running back this early in the season, which I hope you're not, I would check the Texans' backfield regardless. Receiver one, I'm going with Amon-Ra St. Brown versus the Seahawks. It's a talented secondary, but the Rams made it work last week. I know it's Geno Smith at quarterback and not Matthew Stafford, but I think it's Jared Goff. Jared Goff. I don't know what I'm doing today, but it's Jared Goff going against the Seahawks this time. But I think he'll make it work and get things done. Receiver 2, I got Jalen Waddle going up against the Patriots. The only thing that has me nervous about this is that Jalen Waddle is listed as questionable, but he did play last week. The reports I've read seems like it's still the same injury, but he's still working through it, so he should be good to go for Sunday. But if you have Jalen Waddle in your lineup, I would be cautious. At least have a plan B right up before kickoff. And I think the downside is they are playing on Sunday night, so I would make a move now. And I would make your final call, your final decision, if you're nervous, Sunday morning, and not waiting 5 minutes before kickoff, because you'll be in trouble. A tight end, I got Mark Andrews versus the Bengals. I love this matchup, but that's if Andrews plays. Again, he's practiced this week, but he's been limited in practice. The reports, again, I'm reading are saying he should play, but they also said that it was leaning toward he was going to play last week and he didn't play. So that's kind of where we're at on that one. At flex, I'm rolling with Breece Hall, and I'm not changing my mind this time. Rolling with Breece Hall versus the Cowboys because the Jets are going to have to run the ball. They might try and throw it some, but they're going to have to run it. And I think Breece Hall will get enough touches that it will make it worth it. For defense, if you remember last week, I picked up the Vikings. But this week, the Vikings are playing the Eagles. That is not a good matchup for a defense. So I'm switching over to the Colts versus the Texans. Again, rookie quarterback versus a good defense. So there's potential for some turnovers, some sacks. It could blow up in my face. It could be my initial thinking as a Colts fan. But I just love the Colts defense matching up against a rookie quarterback. And then at kicker, I'm going with Nick Folk. What about you? What are you doing for your fantasy team this week? Do you have any questions or thoughts? sharing my way. I'd love to wrestle through it with you. Let's move on to my picks for primetime. For primetime, we have the Dolphins versus the Patriots. I think the Dolphins are too much offensively for the Patriots. And I think the Patriots do not have enough offense to keep up with the Dolphins. I think the Patriots defense might keep them in the game for a little bit, and it may even keep do enough to keep the game interesting for a while. But I think in the end, the Dolphins are going to just be too much for the Patriots in this one. Saints versus the Panthers. I think the Saints defense will overwhelm Bryce Young. So I'm picking the Saints in this primetime matchup. Then also Monday night, we have the Browns versus the Steelers. So we have 2 Monday night games this week. I thought that was a bit strange. But Browns versus the Steelers. I'm picking the Steelers in this one. Yes, they got blasted by the 49ers last week, but it's the Browns. I mean, before I pick the Browns to win 2 in a row, I'd have to see it first. And then again, I'd probably have to pinch myself, smack myself with the board or something else to just double check that I'm still sane. All right, so that's my picks for this week. Again, hopefully I do better than the 7-9 I did last week. Well, but then again, last week I got off to a rough start when I picked the Chiefs over the Lions. So hopefully I've learned my lessons. The good news is we've actually had some data to use this week as we make some decisions. Yes, it's only 1 week's worth, but it's a lot better than predictions and stats from last year. We're trying to use stats from last year to make predictions. I like cold, hard numbers now. So, and even then, right, we all know on paper things don't always go that way in the game. All right, now let's move on. For this fantasy football podcast, I'm going to share with you some players I like, some players I don't like. At quarterback, I like Mac Jones versus the Dolphins. Again, I don't think the Patriots have enough to keep up with the Dolphins offensively, but I think that actually will help Mac Jones. We all saw how the Dolphins struggled against the Chargers offense last week. Again, not saying the Patriots are up to that level, but that gives me some hope. If I'm looking for a quarterback to plug in this week because I don't like my quarterback's matchup, or I had Aaron Rodgers and he got hurt, so I'm looking for a replacement. I think Mac Jones would be one to kind of roll the dice with this week. Quarterbacks I don't like, and I'm not saying taking him out, but I don't like Dak Prescott versus the Jets this week. Again, that Jets defense is for real. And Prescott has a tendency to be a bit turnover prone at times, and I think that might cost you some points in your league. Running back. I do like the Falcons running backs versus the Packers. I know I picked the Packers to win the game, but Algier and Robinson both got double digit carries against the last week against the Panthers, and I could see more of the same this week. I know in our league both of them scored double digit points, so I think it's if you have one of those two backs, I think you're good. I think you're set at running back for the week. Don't be leery of it. The running back I don't like Miles Sanders versus the Saints. And the reason being is the Saints held Derrick Henry to 633 yards and no touchdown. That's Derrick Henry. Now we're talking about the Carolina Panthers with Bryce Young, rookie quarterback, going against that stout Saints defense that just shut down Derrick Henry. Miles Sanders is talented, but he's not Derrick Henry. And if Derrick Henry struggled against that defense, so will Miles Sanders. All right, receivers I like. I like Devontae Smith versus the Vikings. Again, if Baker Mayfield can figure the Vikings defense out, it's only going to be a matter of time between Hurts and the Eagles will do the same. And that's going to make Devontae Smith a very likely target in this game. I don't like Brandon Ayuk versus the Rams. Again, I think the 49ers passing game will struggle some. I mean, the thing is the 49ers just have so many weapons. So I'm leery of this statement, but again, I don't think Ayuk is going to put up the numbers that he did last week. At tight end, I said it on my team. I'm showing my faith in it by doing this with my team. At tight ends, I like Mark Andrews versus the Bengals, again, if he plays. And career-wise against the Bengals in 9 games, Mark Andrews has 45 catches, 533 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And again, that's in 9 games against the Bengals. So if he's healthy and playing this week, he's Lamar's favorite target. And perhaps that was part of Lamar's struggles last week, is he did not have Andrews to throw the ball to. But if Andrews is back this week, especially if you're in a PPR league, I love this matchup. I don't like Tyler Higbee versus the 49ers, and the reason being is Stafford tends to look down the field. And yes, he should check it down. I know this was, I read the scouting report from the ESPN fantasy website, and they think Stafford will check it out, but historically, Stafford struggles to check it down. He still tries to gunsling it down the field. And so I think he's going to overlook Higbee in this game and take those shots when he can and when he shouldn't. All right, defense, I already said I like the Colts versus the Texans. Rookie quarterback versus my Colts defensive front. I love that matchup. I don't like the Falcons versus the Packers. Yes, the Falcons had good, I think they were ranked top 10 or higher. I can't remember in our fantasy football league, according to the numbers. But remember, they played Bryce Young, a rookie quarterback. And now they're going, and yes, Jordan Love is a first-year starter, but he did not look like a first-year starter last game. He's been sitting on the bench for 3 years learning, developing, and they look good versus the Bears without Christian Watson. So I look for Jordan Love to continue to be successful going up against the Falcons this week. So again, I do not like the Falcons defense. All right, well, those are my picks and my advice for this week. We'll see how good it is. Tune back in on Tuesday. I'll share the results with you. Between now and then, if you have questions about faith or football, please send them in. Please be sure to check out the Dirt Path Sermon podcast. And also follow me on TikTok where I do devotional videos. I haven't done one this week, but I post devotional videos on TikTok. So until then, until next time, happy fantasy football.